Catch-22 Summary and Analysis. You must have come across the phrase, "This is a catch-22 situation." What does catch-22 mean? Here are a few examples. You need work experience to get a job, but you need a job to get work experience. You can't get a loan or a credit card without a credit history, but you can't build a credit history without a loan or credit card. Publishers want authors with a proven audience, but you can't build a big audience until you have been published. So a catch-22 situation is a vicious loop. The novel Catch-22 has its own particular situation, and you will learn about it in the summary. When Joseph Heller published Catch-22 in 1961, he rewrote what a war novel could be. He had served as a bombardier in World War II, and instead of telling a straightforward heroic tale, he gave us a book where the absurd and the horrifying lived side by side. Heller used humor not to make war light, but to show how illogical and cruel it could be. His story moves in circles, jumps in time, and reveals events slowly. Out of that chaos comes the most famous part of the book, the Catch-22, a rule so twisted that it traps you no matter what choice you make. The phrase entered the language as a name for any no-win situation. That's where Catch-22 comes in. The military has a rule. A man can be grounded from flying if he is insane. But to be declared insane, he must ask to be grounded. If he asks, it means he is sane enough to be worried about his life, and therefore not insane. If he doesn't ask, he might be crazy, but they won't ground him because he hasn't asked. Either way, he keeps flying. It's a perfect trap. The story. The setting is World War II on the fictional Mediterranean island of Pianosa. Captain John Yossarian is a US Army Air Force bombardier who has already flown many combat missions. He doesn't care about glory or victory, he just wants to stay alive. From the start, Yossarian feels hunted. He believes that everyone in the enemy forces is trying to kill him personally. So he spends much of his time thinking of ways to avoid flying missions. Sometimes he checks into the hospital with vague illnesses. Sometimes he takes detours on missions or drops bombs on empty fields to avoid danger. But there is a problem. The number of missions a man must fly before going home keeps going up. Every time Yossarian nears the quota, Colonel Cathcart, obsessed with impressing his superiors, raises it again. There is no finish line. That's where Catch-22 comes in, as I just explained. If you are crazy, you don't have to fly dangerous combat missions, but to be taken off missions, you have to ask for it. If you ask, it means you care about staying alive. Caring about staying alive means you are sane. If you are sane, you have to keep flying. There is no escape. Life on the base is a mix of tedium and sudden danger. Rules are contradictory, orders are absurd, and greed seeps into everything. The mess officer, Milo Minderbinder, turns the supply system into a vast personal business empire, making trades around the world. He claims everyone has a share in his syndicate, but his deals sometimes leave the men without food. And eventually, he even bombs his own base for profit, justifying it as good business. The story isn't told in a straight line. It circles back to key events, each time revealing more. Early in the book, deaths are mentioned casually, almost as background noise. Much later, the full weight of those deaths comes into view. One death hangs over the whole story, that of Snowden, a young gunner. We hear bits and pieces about it in passing, but not the full account. Only near the end do we see it. Snowden, gravely wounded during a mission, bleeding in the freezing air. Yossarian tries to comfort him, thinking it's just a leg injury. But when he opens Snowden's flak suit, his internal injuries spill out. In that moment, Yossarian understands a brutal truth. The spirit gone, man is garbage. As missions grow riskier, Yossarian's circle grows smaller. McWatt, a pilot friend, accidentally kills a man with his plane's propeller and crashes in guilt. Neatly, a young officer in love with a cynical Italian prostitute dies in a mission soon after persuading her to commit to him. In her grief, she blames Yossarian and tries to kill him more than once. Yossarian reaches his breaking point after a trip to Rome. There, away from the front lines, he sees war's other face. No battles, but the way it has shredded civilian life. He witnesses soldiers assaulting women, police beating civilians, and hunger everywhere. The cruelty isn't confined to the air over enemy territory. It's in the streets, in the law, in the ordinary life of a city at war. When Yossarian finally refuses to fly more missions, he is cornered by his superiors, Colonel Cathcart and Colonel Kohn. They offer him a deal. He can go home early if he praises them publicly and promises never to speak against them. If he refuses, they will court-martial him. It's tempting, Survival is his goal, and this is a way out. But the thought of leaving his fellow airmen in the same deadly cycle weighs on him. Then he hears news that changes everything. His roommate, Or, who seemed comically clumsy in the air and crash landed often, hadn't been unlucky at all. He had been practicing. In his last mission, Or successfully ditched his plane and escaped to neutral Sweden. Every accident had been preparation. Yossarian sees a new possibility. He doesn't have to take the officer's deal or keep flying missions. He can escape like Or did. It won't be safe, but it will be his choice, free from the trap of Catch-22. The novel closes with Yossarian deciding to make a run for it, aiming for Sweden. We don't know if he makes it, but we know he is no longer obeying the rules that kept him in a no-win loop. For a book about a world designed to crush individual will, the act of defiance is as close to victory as it gets. What is the central theme of Catch-22? The central theme of Catch-22, in the larger scheme of things, is absurdity and the inescapability. For example, if you are insane, you don't have to fly a fighter plane. If you don't ask not to fly, it means you are sane. So you are sent on missions. If you say that you are insane and so you don't want to go to missions, it means you are concerned about your life, which means you must be sane and so you are sent on missions. It's also about the absurdity of war. The danger isn't just from enemy fire, it's from the nonsensical rules, the self-serving leaders, and the system that keeps itself alive at any cost. Bureaucracy becomes a machine that eats reason. Rules like Catch-22 are built to protect the institution, not the people in it. The humor in the book makes this clear. It's sharp, silly, and sometimes laugh out loud, but the punchline is often followed by something cruel or tragic. It's also about survival versus duty. Yossarian doesn't want to be a hero, he just wants to live. The goal, so basic and human, becomes a rebellion in a system that treats individual survival as irrelevant. Greed and corruption run alongside the violence. Milo's business empire shows how easily morality can be set aside when profit is at stake, even if it means bombing your own side. And beneath it all is the loss of humanity. Rome's suffering and Snowden's death strip away any illusion that war can be noble. What's left is a grim truth. In a war run on self-interest and circular logic, the only sane act may be to escape. The book explores survival versus duty. Yossarian's fight to stay alive clashes with the military's endless demands. Loss of humanity. War reduces people to tools and numbers. Corruption and self-interest. Leaders twist rules for personal gain, even at the cost of lives. Main characters in Catch-22. Captain John Yossarian. Yossarian is the center of the story. He is a bombardier who doesn't care about medals or patriotism, he only cares about staying alive. That makes him different from the usual war hero. He spends the whole novel fighting against the system that keeps forcing him into danger. At first, he looks selfish, but as the story goes on, you see that his refusal to die for nonsense is the most human and sane thing anyone could do. Colonel Cathcart. Colonel Cathcart is Yossarian's commanding officer. His obsession is not winning the war, it's getting promoted. To look ambitious, he keeps raising the number of missions the men must fly. Every time the end is in sight, he moves it further away. He is the perfect example of how leaders can ruin lives when they care more about appearances than people. Milo Minderbinder. Milo runs the mess hall, but in his hands it becomes an empire. He trades anything with anyone if it brings profit. He even makes deals with the enemy and justifies it by saying everyone has a share. On the surface, he is funny, but beneath the jokes, he shows how greed can twist everything, even to the point of bombing his own men for money. Doc Danica. Doc Danica is the squadron doctor. You'd expect him to protect the soldiers, but he mostly worries about himself. He's the one who explains the logic of Catch-22, the crazy loop where you can't win. Later, a paperwork error declares him dead, and the system treats him as if he doesn't exist. He can shout and beg all he wants, but bureaucracy has the final word. Or is Yossarian's roommate, and everyone thinks he's odd. His plane keeps crashing, and he spends his free time tinkering with machines or telling strange stories. But it turns out he's not a fool at all. Those crashes are practice. He escapes the war entirely by rowing to neutral Sweden. Or looks like a clown, but he is the smartest one in the book. Neatly. Neatly is young and innocent. He falls in love with an Italian prostitute who doesn't love him back. He keeps chasing her anyway, convinced that love will win her over. His sudden death cuts off that dream, and his girlfriend, blinded by grief, blames Yossarian. Nately's story is a small reminder that war doesn't just kill bodies, it kills the hopes of the young before they have even begun to live. Major, 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 Major. Major Major is a man trapped in his own name. A computer error makes him a major, so his name becomes Major Major, Major Major. He is shy, awkward, and unfit for command, so he hides in his office and only lets people in when he isn't there. He's comic on the surface, but like everything in the novel, his story shows how random and meaningless authority can be. The Chaplain, Chaplain Tapman. The chaplain is one of the few kind souls in the novel. He is nervous, often unsure of himself, and bullied by others, but he keeps trying to do the right thing. He wants to bring comfort, even though the system around him doesn't care for kindness or faith. His presence shows that even in a world full of madness, there is still a faint voice trying to hold into decency. Important questions about Catch-22. Why has the writer of Catch-22 used comedy in a war novel? Heller knew that if he wrote a standard serious war story, it would get lost among hundreds of others. By making it a comedy, he highlighted the absurdity that soldiers actually faced, rules that made no sense, leaders chasing ego, and survival depending on nonsense. The laughter makes the horror sharper because it shows how ridiculous and cruel war can be at the same time. What does Catch-22 say about government and military systems? Catch-22 shows how systems are designed to protect themselves, not the people inside. The logic is twisted so you can never win. That's true not only in war but also in offices, governments, and daily life. It's a reminder that rules often sound fair on the surface but exist to keep control in the hands of those who made them. Do you think Yossarian is selfish for wanting only to survive, or is he the most honest character in the book? On the surface, Yossarian looks selfish. He only wants to save his own skin. But if you look deeper, he is simply honest about what everyone else feels. Nobody really wants to die for vague ideals. His selfishness exposes the insanity of leaders who think human lives are expendable for their careers. How does the book use humor to cover up and then expose the horror of war? The humor is what keeps the story alive. It tricks you into laughing at nonsense, but then suddenly shows you death or cruelty. That switch is deliberate. Heller wanted to show that war isn't only tragedy or only comedy, but a mix of both. The humor makes the horror more real because it feels like life, where absurd moments sit next to painful ones. Why does Colonel Cathcart keep raising the number of missions? What does this say about leadership in the book? Cathcart doesn't care about winning the war or protecting his men. He wants promotion, medals, and praise. Raising the number of missions makes him look ambitious. His actions show how dangerous it is when leaders care more about their own image than the lives they control. The story jumps back and forth in time. How does this structure affect the way you feel about the characters and events? The jumping timeline is confusing, but it matches the chaos of war. Soldiers don't experience life in neat straight lines. Memories come back, events blur, and time bends under stress. By using this style, Heller forces the reader to feel some of that same confusion. Snowden's death is revealed slowly. Why do you think Heller waited so long to show it in full detail? By delaying the full story of Snowden's death, Heller builds suspense and keeps a shadow hanging over Yossarian. When it finally comes out, it's raw and unforgettable. That moment explains everything about Yossarian's fear and his obsession with staying alive. Why would you want to read Catch-22? The first reason is the humor. Most war books are heavy and serious, but Catch-22 makes you laugh in the middle of chaos. The rules don't make sense, the conversations twist into nonsense, and the characters behave in ways that are both silly and sharp. That humor isn't just for fun. It's a way to survive the horror. When you laugh, you also feel the absurdity of it all. The second reason is the truth hidden inside the madness. The book shows how systems, whether military, government, or corporate, often trap people with circular logic. You have probably felt this in your own life, needing experience to get a job, but needing a job to get experience. Reading Catch-22 makes you see those patterns clearly. It sticks with you because you realize it isn't only about war, it's about how power works anywhere. The third reason is Yossarian's defiance. He isn't a hero in the traditional sense. He's scared, selfish, and desperate to stay alive, but that makes him relatable. His final choice, to step out of the system and take control of his fate, feels inspiring. Despite the book's confusion, despite its length, you come out of it with that image, a man refusing to play a rigged game, and maybe that's why people still read it. Why you wouldn't want to read Catch-22? The first reason is the confusing structure. The book doesn't move in a straight line, it jumps back and forth in time, repeats scenes, and often hides the full truth until much later. If you like simple storytelling, this can feel frustrating. You have to be patient and willing to piece things together. The second reason is the length and repetition. At almost 500 pages, it's not a quick read. Many jokes and scenes circle around the same absurd points. Some readers find that funny, but others feel it drags on. If you're looking for a tight, focused story, this one might test your endurance. The third reason is the tone shift. At first, the book is full of ridiculous comedy, but as it goes on, it becomes darker, with graphic deaths, cruelty, and hopelessness. The switch can feel jarring. Some readers expect a light satire all the way through and are shaken by the grim ending. I hope you have enjoyed listening to the summary and analysis of Catch 22. If yes, please like the video and subscribe to my channel so that you get a notification when I upload my next video.